It's time to take your business to the next level, the boss level. These are the premier business owner strategies and successes being utilized by the industry's top talent today. Rock your business like a boss, a VO boss. Now let's welcome your host, Ann Ganguza.
Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast, the AI and Voice series. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, and today I have a couple of very special guests with me to talk about production of AI voices and being in the AI voice space. Welcome to the show, Sam Ufret, producer, director, engineer extraordinaire for Lotas Productions in New York City and a fellow New Jersey girl. So I'm so excited to have you back on the show. Thanks so much, Sam. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And we are also very fortunate to have the voice talent extraordinary Judy Fossum here with us today, who has worked with Lotas to produce her voice dub or her AI voice. And I'm very excited to learn that your studio, Judy, is powered by renewable energy, which I think is amazing.
It is. Thank
you. And you have a studio cat and a studio dog. So welcome to the show.
I do. Thank you. Kind of partial. The dog can't come in the office or the studio, and the cat can't go in the studio. But, they're with me in person. And yeah, we
Booth
have
pets are always welcome.
That's right.
They are.
Studio pets are amazing. So
yeah. I live in Windy, Wyoming is where my studio is and where my office is. And so we live in the county, so we have a residential SkyStream 3.7 wind turbine.
We've love
had
it.
Actually for almost 11 years.
Wow.
And we are grid tied. This has nothing to do with voiceover, but it does kind of because it powers me.
But it's cool.
Partially.
Absolutely.
It's
powering
the
you
wind.
now. It's
It is. Partially it is.
The wind is partially powering you right now as we speak, which I think is amazing.
Thank you. We are grid tied to the electric grid, but part of our power comes from the wind.
Well, and I have solar panels here in California, so I love it. I love it.
That's awesome.
So this is some exciting information that I'm excited to present to the boss listeners out there, because both of you have been involved in creating, as a talent, an AI voice, the work that you had to put in to have an AI voice generated, and Sam, the production of it. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, Judy, tell us a little bit about how you got introduced to this and what made you, what was your decision in regards to why you wanted to create an AI voice for yourself?
Well, I had heard about it, in peripheral conversations online and reading articles and all of that, because it's becoming more ubiquitous now. Mm-hmm. But Sam and Jim at Lotas Productions introduced me to Rupal Patel at Vocal ID, and they were doing some work together. And, they had asked some talent, it's up to you if you want to or not, to record phonemes, as we call it, or it's a bunch of sentences or, paragraphs or whatever put together. And they're basically getting your phonemes of different, I don't know how to explain this correctly, but the different consonants and vowels and the different combinations of that put together of your voice. So that if a project, say, comes up that maybe you're not available at me as a voice talent to record in my studio, they can put those phonemes together to produce, a commercial or a short website, not website, but a short paragraph of information about something, for lack of better words, or voiceover project. I come from the school of thought that the technology is always going to be getting better and it's not going away. So my idea is, how do you work with it? And how do you, so I'm coming from a space of not fear, that it's not going to, take away our jobs or anything like that, but it could be something that could, not necessarily residual income, but maybe you do a project and say you do a voiceover project, just, plain old voiceover, you record it and you send it. Maybe the client needs a word or two changed or something very minor in the script, say in a year, for example. So instead of asking me to record the whole thing over again, they could and I don't know how all the tech stuff works and the production works of that, and Sam can maybe talk about that a little bit better, but maybe, changing the words, it's taking my phoneme and putting it in rather than me recording the
Sure.
whole thing again.
Absolutely.
And that and of course with permission, and everybody at Lotas, they're so the utmost awesome most people to work with, and they know what they're doing. They're working with talent to make sure that there's fair compensation for, of course, voiceovers, but use of a voice when it comes to a synthetic voice that is, it's your voice but it's put together electronically.
Sure.
That can be used for projects. So when you're working with folks that are concerned with fairness and contracts and things like that, I felt comfortable working with them. And I had worked with them before, so you get a rapport, and you get you trust the folks.
Sure. And I get this feeling after, I've interviewed Jim previously regarding, contracts and negotiation. And I really feel as though like Lotas is on the cutting edge of being able to negotiate things like that to make sure that your voice is going to be used in a fair and ethical way. I think that's of the utmost importance for everybody right now, especially with it's kind of chaotic out there in the world. But Sam, I'd like to ask you a little bit about, you're like in the nitty gritty, like get your hands dirty and producing these voices. What does it take to help produce an AI voice? And what's different than, let's say, any normal day of production for you?
Yeah, so basically when it comes to recording for AI voice or for a voice dub, what it comes down to is typically there may be certain scripts that you would need to read as the talent, depending on what kind of program you're using, if it's cloud-based or if it's something locally based on your computer, that could affect your workflow. So the one that we use very often, it's actually web-based. So everything's saved in a cloud, each prompt is individually saved, and that's how it works. And this is actually the process that Judy went through when she was going to get recorded for her voice dub. So what happens is, at least with a program we use, you need at least 6 hours minimum of recorded content in order to build a voice. That doesn't mean 6 hours straight. That just means like maybe a half hour one day, a half hour another, maybe an hour one day if you have the energy for it. So you kind of take your time, you build it up, and then from there, the prompts get reviewed. They get okayed or denied based on if there was anything like artifacts or maybe something was missaid. Because like Judy said, you are building off the phonemes. And kind of to explain what a phoneme is, think of the word cat. From that word, you can also make the word tack and the word act. So you're not getting individual letters. The syllables themselves are letters. So that's what's happening. So Joey's brown dog jumped over the purple fire hydrant. Makes zero sense. That may be a sentence you'd have to read, but it's because it needs to pull specific phonemes and inflections. It's not because it needs to make sense, because those pieces will be cut together into a sentence down the line. So that's what it's kind of about. And then, the technology I have on my side, there's a program I use where I can actually take Judy's voice, type out a sentence, and maybe over the course of a couple of seconds or maybe a minute or two, it can actually generate something that Judy says in her voice.
Now, so my understanding, right, there's two different, I want to maybe differentiate. There's the AI voice that's been generated through this process by which you're talking about, or the voice dub. That, I believe, the computer generates that from machine learning, correct? That in the phonemes that are together, which is a different process than, let's say, traditional text-to-speech prompts, which used to be like concatenated together. So that's why a lot of the text-to-speech of yesteryear and even now sounds a lot more robotic. And AI voices can sound a lot more human because of the method by which they are putting together those sounds to make the human voice.
Yeah, and like I said, at least for our processes, it's 6 hours minimum. Now, keep in mind, someone like the big three, like Amazon or Google or Apple, they may have the person who does their AI voice come in for a full week and do a couple hours each in order to get enough phonemes and get enough clarity in those phonemes in order to turn them into sentences that sound very human. So it really does depend on how much time you put into the recordings, like how many hours of recordings you do, that really refines that sound to make it sound more human.
So the more hours of sentences or whatever it is that I'm recording, the better it's going to match my human voice?
Yeah, like that is pretty much the theory. It's like the more you have on hand, the more phonemes can actually be individualized, the more, inflections can be individualized, and then you could get close to something that sounds very human.
So is that something, Judy, that you went into the studio to do, or could you do that from your home studio?
I did it all from my home studio. What my process was, I had a login for Vocal ID, and instead of recording onto my computer and sending a WAV file or an AIF or whatever, I actually was recording into their system.
Okay.
So I just pressed a button, and I if I remember correctly, I pressed a button and it said record, and then I tested my microphone first of all, and then I pressed record and read the sentence or the phrase, and then it was phrase by phrase. It wasn't like a whole paragraph. It was sentence by sentence, that type of a thing. And it wasn't a storyline. It was all the cat is purple and, that type of a thing. And there were, some numbers and, there were commas and, question marks and, all of that. So you get those different inflections. And then it just automatically pretty much went into their system. I didn't have to send them anything. It was direct record onto their At least for this project, it was direct record on. I didn't have to edit anything.
How interesting that it's on their site. Yeah.
And if I did do it wrong, I said a word wrong or I missed a word, I could go back and do it.
So I find that interesting, Sam, and maybe you'd like to chime in on this, that the process of the recording is actually done on a website so that it's not necessarily utilizing, it's utilizing your home studio, but you're not doing a local recording. So must be like a high-powered connection to get a really good quality file, I would assume.
Yeah, so the way it works is, the way Vocal ID has their setup is their recordings get put into their cloud. Everything is web-based with them. We do not have to send any local recordings to them. We don't have to send any backups. Everything goes into their system. So, what happens is kind of like how Judy was explaining, the way that Vocal ID's visual setup is, it kind of has a very simplified transport. And, you have a play, record, repeat, things like that. Fast forward, rewind. You have those functions, so you could at least check the pieces to make sure, okay, does this sound correct? I kind of flubbed that one syllable. Let me try it again. So that's kind of what happens. And then it gets saved into their cloud, into the bank for each individual voice that gets created. And then from there, you can get that person synthesized.
So let me ask you then, all right, so I have my synthesized voice, and now somebody wants to create a sentence, right, and use it for, let's say, an e-learning or an explainer video or whatever, maybe a phone prompt. What is it is there anything that can help control emotion on it? Because I know that right now people are saying AI voices are very robotic. They do sound human, but there's usually like a note here or there when it kind of sounds like it might be robotic or a computer. What's put in place these days to help it sound even more human? Is there a way to put an emotion on it, or, change pitch or...
Yeah, so that kind of depends. Kind of like with every technology, when it first comes to being, it sucks. Think of TVs, think of refrigerators, think of cars. They are not perfect.
Right.
They have continually been evolving for decades, if not centuries, depending on how long they have existed in our timeline. So, of course, voiceover for AI is going to sound kind of clunky right now. But 10 years from now, it's going to sound great. It already sounds 10 years better than what it did when it originally launched with Siri on the iPhone 4. So when you look at it, it's like, sometimes you're not going to have the exact inflections you want. Sometimes you're going to be missing some of the some of the emotions and the inflections that you need in order to really convey that human element. But we're going to eventually get there. And what happens is, at least with us for Vocal ID, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the name of the program, so I'm going to just maybe refrain from saying the name of it. But I basically get a web-based plugin that I can play around with and actually change inflections or change the mood so I can make it sound sad or sarcastic to a degree. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of difference between Judy's actual voice and what I can make with an AI sentence, but you can hear it. It is there. And it's going to get better.
So then if you were to produce something for Judy, like an explainer video or even a commercial, so you would have control over different aspects of her voice and how it sounds in terms of, I think there's so many things that come into play when you want to sound more human. I've been for years teaching my students how to sound more conversational. And so I've done a lot of studying of the language, and pacing has so much to do with sounding natural and conversational. And I'm wondering, you must have controls on pacing between this. Like, what does it take to produce a spot so that it sounds as human as possible on your end?
Well, we haven't even gotten to that point yet where we've had to put an AI voice onto a spot. Like I have, I think, occasionally seen them on things like Spotify or maybe Pandora. But even then, it's more for something related to either Google or Amazon, where they're actually using Alexa or they're using the Google voice. So because of that, you're kind of familiar with that voice and it doesn't faze you. I still really haven't seen it today in commercials. But what I know is likely going to happen is AI dubs would theoretically take away the portions of voiceover that can be kind of daunting, like pickup sessions. So let's say you're doing a car commercial and it goes from $24.99 to $19.99 or $19.99. Yeah. So they're changing the price of the car rather than have to pull Judy in and she needs to get into the city and then she needs to get into the studio and they have to rent out the studio time. There may be the potential that we could just change $24.99 to $19.99. So I suck with numbers.
Well, and assuming though that right in the contract, Judy's voice dub voice would get paid for that.
Yeah. So the way that I've at least been in talks with it, I know this is something that Jim does a lot more than I do, but the talks kind of center around the idea of, yes, you would get paid something, but obviously it's not you, it's not your full voice. So because of that, you'd only get portional. So I don't know what the exact numbers are. So it's like, let's say I'm using like an exact example here. Let's say that your rate is $200 an hour. If they do a voice dub, it could be less than that. It could maybe be $100 an hour, maybe $75. Again,
but you don't
these
have
are
to
not
go
numbers
to the
that
studio.
I've talked about. Yeah, that would depend. So basically, it also is going to depend on what's in the contract. It's going to depend on what Judy's agreed to. But keep in mind, that's just a matter of really kind of keeping an eye on what these contracts say. It's a matter of really kind of making sure you know what you're signing up for. So again, these are total examples that I'm coming up with. This is nothing that's been set in stone ever. So please don't take my word for it and send me with pitchforks.
Well, I think it's more important to get in on the ground floor of something, especially because, I like to call it the Wild West, right? We're figuring this stuff out. And I know that there's kind of chaos out there right now with somebody's voice, which was being used without their permission. And so I think that there's going to be lots of precedents set. And I think that that's a good thing for our industry. I think we need to, as an industry, be educated and be smart about this and, evolve along with it. I have always kind of taken that stand. But do you think, I guess I'll pose the question to both of you, do you guys think that AI voices or voice dubs are going to take away our jobs?
No. No, they will not.
Okay, so I will let you, so explain. Let's discuss.
I'll come from the acting side of it.
Okay.
Say you have the phonemes, but there's always, when you do a voiceover project, and as you know, and you work with this all the time, Sam, there's always context.
Yeah.
Yes. You bring in your own personal life or your acting chops, your skills and this and that, or hopefully you don't bring all of your emotions into the studio if you're having a really bad day or what have you. But that all plays into the context or, even the subtext of it. So that is where the acting chops come in. Maybe it's a case where, say, IVR prompts or message on hold prompts or something like that, or maybe a little bit of e-learning or something, those might be able to, and I'm not saying settling for, but you might be able to create those prompts and that audio that is needed from a synthesized voice. But when it comes to, say, I'm going to use a commercial, there's still there's the emotion, there's the context, and the brand, for said product or, service or whatever it is. So I think there's always going to be a need for that. The other thing I understand that things are improving and technology is improving, but again, I can't even give you a source for this. Say an audiobook, for example. The human ear, listening to an audiobook for hours and hours, or maybe even a textbook for that matter, for hours and hours, to do a synthesized voice versus a human voice, you just kind of tune out a synthesized voice from what I understand. It's a few minutes.
Well,
I don't know
Judy,
what it is.
I totally agree with that. And I just want to interject for 2 seconds. Yeah. This is why I think if you really, I'm the teacher in this group.
You
I was
are.
the teacher in
and
front
you're
of the
a good
for
good
20
teacher.
years. Thank you so much. And that's why I say e-learning now, if you ever thought you just needed to sound pretty or just read, you're so wrong. And I too believe that there is an emotion and there's a heart behind teaching behind the mic. And that's where I feel that even though most people will say AI may take over that industry, there will be people who appreciate if there are teachers behind the mic, because you cannot convey that care, right? That nuance of emotion right now with an AI voice, just like you're saying. I don't think that you can. And it's long form, and you certainly don't want people to tune out, right? If you're trying to teach them something. So anyways, please continue. But I always want to put that in. That's my vote for the teacher behind the mic and being human.
And
So.
there's some credibility there. And also there's trust.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, a human talking to a human.
absolutely.
I mean, really talking and, and caring. So I think there might, but then again, there might be one or two words, say an e-learning course needs to be changed up a little bit.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Then also that's incumbent upon us as voice actors to keep our acting chops up.
Yes, agreed.
So that we don't, I guess you could say a lot of things can be replaced and replaceable, but that's incumbent upon us to keep training and to learn new skill sets and whatever the case is, so that we are able to continue to do what we love to do.
Sam?
Yeah. So
Yes.
We just got to keep, we have to continue to improve our skill sets.
I agree. We have to be the
that's-
human.
yeah.
We have to be human.
You gotta be human. Yeah. Agreed.
So you can pay for human Ann, or you can pay for voice dub Am, right? Human
Yeah,
or
so-
both. Why not get paid for both?
do you want me to go on my
Yes,
side? Or
absolutely.
You want, okay.
Sam, will we be replaced by AI voices?
No, you will not be replaced. You will
Okay.
not be replaced.
Why?
So basically, what I imagine voice dubs, like AI dubs, doing for the future for voiceover talents is it's just going to free up your time. So think of something IVR based, think of pickups, think of the small pieces of voiceover that it could chip away at that just frees you up to actually do other projects that you're probably either more interested in or need more time for. So that's where I imagine it actually coming into play, and that's where I imagine it working the best. Like I said, it's not great right now. The way that voiceover for AI sounds, it's kind of clunky. With time, it is going to get a little better, but I think there's always still going to be that distinction between an AI voice and a human voice. It's just going to come off in the context and the way that something is said. So it's not going to take your job. So please don't worry. It's not getting booked for any AAA game. I promise.
I will tell you right now that I know voice talent right now will say it doesn't need to free up my time because I am not either I'm not that busy that I can't always voice something, and it might be something that they love to do, right? So I don't know if that time thing, and I totally get why you're saying that though, people would buy into that necessarily, because I've actually had people say, well, I don't know about the time thing, but what I can say is that when I'm 90 and my voice doesn't sound like it does right now, I still would love to be making a little bit of moolah. So if I have my voice dub, right, and they're still doing explainer videos or whatever it is that they're doing, and I would say, I think right now voice dubs or AI voices are good for like short things, like telephone prompts, or like, let's say in e-learning, right, let's say I want to find out the definition of or a vocabulary term, and I click on the word, and then I have something that has a short phrase. I think that that's entirely acceptable to me as a consumer of the media, that, yeah, it could sound like a voice. But I think if it's anything long format that needs engagement, which is just about everything, I think a human voice is still, I don't know, I think we'll always still need that. So that's my vote.
Yeah, AI just doesn't have the nuance yet.
Yeah.
We can't figure out what it is that we need in order to create that nuance. And as long as that's a thing, then we're going to still need to improve the voices, which is exactly what we're doing now.
And you know what? We may never create that nuance, right? I mean, humans are the ones developing AI, right? We are in control of how good it gets, right? Or I like to think that, right? So maybe there will just, it depends, I think, on people's acceptance and trust. I know, Judy, you talked about trust. I think that's so important, especially trust is such a big issue in terms of, let's say you're trying to sell something like in a commercial, or, you want to trust your teacher, or you just want to trust what people say. And I think that when people hear that odd note that may or may not sound like it could be a human, then they immediately, not sure about that. So I don't know if AI voices, I think we'll get to that point. I think they'll get to the point that the market will want it to get to, if you know what I mean. We are at the mercy, and I think we forget sometimes, we're at the mercy of what the market will pay for and what the market will buy, right? And so certain people will buy AI voices and certain people will, always opt for, I think, the human voice. And so I think as business owners, we need to listen to what the market is out there and roll with the changes and evolve. So,
yeah, and I'll definitely add to this as well. Like, it's here, guys. AI is here. Voice dubs are here. And if you're resistant to it, it's not going to get you anywhere. The best thing you could do is throw yourself into this, learn it, understand it, and help be part of the group of people who are trying to shape this industry. So this way we don't have issues with contracts in the future. So this way we don't have issues with voice dubs in the future. So you can't be resistant to change. Nothing's going to come out of that. I mean, people probably were upset when typewriters happened because it's like, oh, now these college kids don't have to handwrite anything. Everybody's going to forget script. Well, guess what? Look, we're at computers and they're not teaching script anymore. Get over it. It's happened already. So, when it comes down to it, really just kind of take a step back if you're resistant to it and realize, hey, is there something that I can contribute to this as opposed to saying, no, I wholesale hate this. I want nothing to do with it.
Good advice. Judy?
I'll dog tag on that a little bit as well. And there might be folks who, choose not to. And that's okay. Everybody's coming from a different space and different experiences. For those of us who do choose, to work into this and to learn more about it, I think it's really important for us, like we're doing now, to have these conversations.
Yes,
when
agreed.
it comes to, and you know so much about business and, we all should as voice talent, as we do, but when you're talking about usage and licensing or whatever the nomenclature is going to be in a contract, if you choose to, have a synthesized voice made of your voice, that's, again, there's a self-responsibility there of being, in the conversation and incumbent upon to, make sure you read the contract and have some conversations with, because like you say, it's the Wild West for, usage and rates and fare and all that. I'm going to go with outer space. Because, there's so many moving parts and we're all still so very much learning about it. But I think it's very important for us to be a part of that conversation so it's not left by the wayside. And
Absolutely.
then, there's,
we can help define it.
50 cents.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or whatever the case is. I
agree.
I think that's important.
If you're not getting your hands on it, somebody else will.
Well, exactly. And why not be the ones to define it, right? Let's define the standards. It's the best time, I think, to really get in on the ground floor and make this our standards. There is a place, a website that those of you that have been following this podcast know that my husband works for an AI company. So I get a lot of information from my husband too. There is a website called the openvoicenetwork.org, and it's all about standards-based, the importance of having standards for voice in AI. I think it's a consortium of different companies that belong to this organization. It's got some really great things on the website in terms of what I feel people should be looking for in terms of being fair and ethical in terms of voice usage. So it might be something that you guys can take a look at, openvoicenetwork.org. I know a lot of companies that are a part of that. You can join it. You can be a member. I know that there's a number of companies that are members of that. So it is being talked about, and it is something important. And I think that we have a voice and we need to use it, and let's make it ours, right?
The other thing I'll add quickly to that is you brought up, ethics and usage, and usage as in, how many ears are going to hear it or how many eyes are going to see it, that type of a thing, but actually the usage.
Yes.
That's why the choice of, working with Sam and Jim and the folks at Vocal ID, because there's a trust there.
Yes.
They're not going to say, please always ask me if you're going to use my synthesized voice on a project. Don't use my voice without my permission.
Yes.
I'm not going to go, please don't put me on something. Well, first of all, ask me first, but I'm not going to do a
and you can't resell it. Right?
Yeah.
No reselling of the voice. Like that data belongs to that company, and that company, I actually have a contract that says for my voice app that says that if I choose to not honor the contract anymore and I no longer want my voice on the app, that my data, my voice will be destroyed. which is fine because I don't want them to resell my voice to another company and then I have no idea how it's being used. So I think that's also an important thing for people to look for when we're talking about how is my voice being used. I don't want to be hearing my voice voicing something unethical or something I would never stand up or be behind or, it's...
Correct. Not to be sold to a third party.
Yep, exactly.
Or always give the whoever did the voice talent, ask them permission to use that synthesized voice for said project again. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, do anything with cigarettes.
Yeah, exactly.
No offense to anybody who smokes out there, but I'm not going to do a commercial promote. Not that they do them anyway.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I just, it's that type of a thing.
Sure, absolutely. Ladies, thank you so much for this. It's been so enlightening, and I really appreciate you spending time to talk to the bosses today. I'm going to give a big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. You too can connect like bosses and find out more at IPDTL.com. You guys have an amazing week. Go out there and educate yourselves like bosses, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks
Ann.
so much,
Thanks, Sam.
Ann. This was great.
Join us next week for another edition of VO Boss with your host, Ann Ganguza. And take your business to the next level. Sign up for our mailing list at voboss.com and receive exclusive content, industry revolutionizing tips and strategies, and new ways to rock your business like a boss. Redistribution with permission, coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.